Welcome back to the Citrus Today Show. Very happy to have Aaron Pagan back with us from the American Red Cross. And this is very timely because of the disaster that's happened this week in Oklahoma. Oh boy, tornadoes are terrible things, and when disaster strikes, whether it's tornadoes, hurricanes, whether it's fire in a home, the American Red Cross rushes to the scene to help out.
Yes.
And though it's in Oklahoma, people here are asking, what can we do to help? And so how does the American Red Cross in Florida, Central Florida area, tie in with a disaster in Oklahoma?
Sure. Well, American Red Cross across the country has chapters and regions, and so we certainly have a chapter in Oklahoma City that is really kind of the main chapter that's responding. But we really it's all hands on deck. So even our national headquarters out of Washington, D.C. is certainly involved to make sure that that chapter has everything they need to respond to the disaster. So the way we work is that locally we'll get the volunteers needed to respond and to help and to open shelters and to feed people, provide health services to support the medical community, and provide disaster mental health services for everybody who've been really traumatized by it. So we'll start locally, and then as needs are determined, it kind of moves out in circles around the local disaster area. And so we certainly don't want to fly people from Florida to Oklahoma if that's not the most efficient way to work. We want to try to start locally, and then as needs are determined, then we'll kind of move out for the quantity of volunteers that they need, or specific skill sets. So no one from the Mid-Florida region here in Central Florida has been deployed yet, but it could certainly happen. So as they continue to determine needs, we'll see if our volunteers will wind up going.
So there are people who specialize in certain phases of a disaster recovery, and they're trained and they're positioned throughout the United States. So the only foreseeable people that you might see deployed from our area would be a highly trained specialist in a one-set field.
Most likely, because again, those folks who are helping with mass care, the feeding and the sheltering, they'll probably have enough folks there up near Oklahoma to help with that. But again, we just don't know. We don't know how big the effort's going to be until it again kind of has some time to have the needs assessed. So we never know. We might have to have just some volunteers who are shelter workers and people in mass care and feeding who might go. So we'll just kind of see. We're kind of watching for what the need is, and then we are ready to just respond when we need to. But it just puts the emphasis on why it's so important to become a volunteer with Red Cross now. Don't wait until gray skies when we're in the middle of a disaster. Come now during blue skies and visit redcross.org/mid-Florida, and on the left side of the homepage you'll see the word volunteer. Click there and you can get started. So you can come get some Red Cross training, even dabble in a few different areas and see where your interest is and your talent is. And then that way, when something affects Central Florida, you're already ready to go as a Red Cross volunteer. It can be very overwhelming in the middle of a disaster, as you can imagine, to have hundreds, sometimes thousands of what we call spontaneous volunteers kind of show up and say, show me what to do. You can only imagine if someone came to your workplace and said, I want to work with you today, give me something. And so if we have people who are already in the Red Cross system, have had classes, are trained, already know the specific area they want to work in, it's fantastic. It makes us stronger and more organized and just better ready to respond.
If people in our area want to get involved somehow, not just volunteering their time or whatnot, but volunteering financially to help out, or volunteering with donations of some kind, clothing, every little thing that we take for granted is probably the things that they need in Oklahoma. How do they go about doing that through the American Red Cross?
That's a great question, because there is a lot of confusion. There are so many wonderful nonprofits out there, and they all work differently. The way the American Red Cross works is that we buy up close to the disaster site. So one, it helps the economy of a disaster-stricken area. Two, we're able to buy in bulk, so we're really able to buy a lot for a lot less money. Three, we have amazing corporate partners that really, quite frankly, will donate hundreds and thousands of bottles of water or food or whatever we might need. So really the best way, the most efficient way to help Red Cross is to give a financial donation. That way we're able to do everything we need to right up close to the site. Also, if we were to take any sort of goods, now we have to truck them to Oklahoma. As you can imagine, the cost to get goods from Florida to Oklahoma, and that's not the best way for us to use donor dollars.
Very true.
And then to take our volunteers out of a shelter or out of feeding, so that they have to now wash and sort clothing or shoes or things like that. Again, in the immediate need, that's not the best use of our American Red Cross volunteers. So, so we ask that everyone please give financially. There are 3 ways. For folks who would like to give by phone, it's 1-800-RED-CROSS. If you'd like to give online, it's www.redcross.org. And then if you would like to text to donate, you can text the word Red Cross to the number 90999. And that's a $10 donation. So if anybody would like to give a different amount, they can either go by phone or online. And so the financial donations, a small amount, whatever you can give, is a wonderful, wonderful help. And it always goes to where the need is greatest. So right now it's going to Moore, Oklahoma.
I think one of the great points that you bring out, because a lot of organizations small organizations say, oh, we're going to do something to help this disaster, and they get their people together or get a bunch of supplies together. They've spent a lot of money and energy getting whatever they have out there, and then once they get there, knowing how to best utilize it.
Exactly.
It's much better if you take your resources that you have, put it into an organization that is well-trained and on the ground. They can best decide at that location what the needs are and the most cost-effective way to get the supplies that are needed.
Yes.
Very good point indeed. Well, we got hurricane season coming up on us here, June the 1st, here in Florida. And we get to start thinking about that as we look at what's happening in Oklahoma. We need to start getting prepared.
Absolutely.
And there are some things that we'll talk about here to put the kit together in your own home to make things a little safer and get yourself mentally ready
Yes.
in case something were to happen in our neck of the woods. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this with more on Citrus Today. Yes. All right, welcome back to Citrus Today. Again, Erin Pagan is with us. She is the communications expert, if you will, for the Central Florida area for the American Red Cross. And we were talking about the disaster in Oklahoma and the fact that people, small groups deploy out there. They become actually a part of the disaster rather than helping in some cases. So it's vitally important that you think about what you're doing before you say, I want to help these folks in Oklahoma or wherever a disaster happens, and then smartly get with an organization that does this all the time and has the contacts, has the resources. This year, the American Red Cross celebrates 132 years,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's a lot of years of experience. I told Erin she doesn't look a day over 21, but but that means a lot of years of experience goes into what you do in the field. And you have emergency kits that you help people put together. Let's talk about those kits and some things to put in it.
Well, the best way you can arm yourself and your family is to go ahead and get your disaster kit together. And one of the things we love to do if there are children in the home is, you know, we make bracelets at all the hurricane expos, and Citrus County just had their hurricane expo. And we put these beaded bracelets on the kids, and we say you can't take it off until you've met with mom and dad and gotten your disaster kit together for hurricane season. So, and that's just a nice, fun reminder. It gets the kids involved. The next time you go to the grocery store, you're going to get one of the items that's on your kit checklist.
Right.
And we're going to make that available by email to me. So if you would like a Get a Kit checklist, please email me at erin.pagan, and it's Pagan at redcross.org. And so we have these kit checklists together. It's not only get a kit, it's make your plan. So if something were to happen to your home, that you have a meeting site, off-site of your family members, so you know how to get back together. And it's be informed, how to stay informed with the weather channels and to be able to know what's going to happen as everybody else knows, that you're always listening. So we can talk a little bit right now about getting your kit together. And again, there are lots of items in here that are extremely helpful. One of them is a battery-powered or a hand crank radio. I think so much of us take our technology for granted, and should cell phones go down, should TV go down, you know, you really need a way to stay in touch, and radio is one of those ways. So having lots of batteries and having a battery-powered or hand crank radio is extremely important.
Okay.
Always making sure that you've got your prescriptions and medications, because I think a lot of people think, you know, I'm always going to have enough because I can run down to the store. Well, should the store be closed, make sure you have extra medication and that you've got it in your kit. That way you don't wind up having a medical emergency in the middle of an actual hurricane emergency. Of course, flashlights are extremely important because absolutely you can lose power. So having a flashlight and having your extra batteries are extremely important. And there are lots of items in here too. So just making sure you have that complete checklist. And for anyone who's on a budget, don't feel overwhelmed by this checklist. You know, hurricane season starts June 1st, but really the most active part of the season tends to be September, October. And so even if you commit to buying one item a week and start with those that are the most critical, think about what would you need if a hurricane hit tomorrow, and start buying the most critical items first. You know, having some jugs of water, having some non-perishable food, and a can opener. And if you buy one thing a week, you know, you'd be surprised by the time October comes what a really robust kit you'd have, even though you're on a budget. So for seniors, for people on a budget, please don't feel overwhelmed by this and kind of paralyzed to not do anything. Just take it one step at a time.
There you go. You, again, have these lists available that they can get their hands on very easily. There's a number on screen and your email address if they would like to email you to get a copy of the list of things that you need to concern yourself with. There are items like water.
Yes.
It's important that you store water ahead of time if you know that a disaster is headed your way. Now, the thing about tornadoes, you have very little time to prepare for them. Mm-hmm. Hurricanes, which we have a lot of in Florida, you do have advance notice. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of items that if